Thank you so much for hitting the play button on your favorite listening device of choice from wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Duff Tyler, and this is a Duff Said. So I was at the bank recently, and I see this guy come walking in, and he is wearing the brightest shoes that I have ever seen. And I'm just looking at him thinking, what is this grown man doing with these bright shoes on that you would normally see like girls playing high school basketball wearing on the court? I mean, these were like highlighter yellow shoes. You could see this dude coming from a block away. So I had to know the story behind these kicks because you could probably see this dude at night if he was wearing them clear as day. Well, it turns out his wife bought him the shoes. And he made a joke about it. He said that, it helps me direct traffic. People can see me when I'm coming. No kidding. They really could. But the next time that I saw Pastor Buddy Frantz, he had a much more in-depth story to share. For 12 years, he was the red, white, and blue Afroman. This was a character that you would see at Detroit Pistons basketball games at the Palace of Auburn Hills. He would do all sorts of things with the crowd. He'd launch t-shirts, he'd interact with the kids, and of course, he'd get everybody fired up for Detroit basketball! From the teal uniform days to the championship in '04 to the Malice at the Palace, Buddy was there, and he's got a lot of memories to share with us. My conversation with Pastor Buddy Frantz, the red, white, and blue Afroman, starts now. So, Buddy, when did you first become a fan of the Detroit Pistons, and when did you start going to their games?
I was a fan of the Pistons years ago. When I really started paying attention was a friend of mine who I went to high school with. He graduated a year before me, Walker Russell, who was a hometown kid here in Pontiac. And he got signed by the Pistons the year before they won their championship, I believe, or right around that time, or 1 or 2 years before. And that's when the Pistons had moved to the Silverdome, and they were actually building the new arena, the Palace, which would be known as the Palace. And I really started paying attention then. I paid attention a little bit, but I was able to, which was an enormity. I think the Pistons hold the record for most fans because during one of the playoff games, they seated, I think it was like 40-some thousand people in the Silverdome there because they had, I don't know if you remember, they had that big blue curtain that hung and separated it.
Oh, yes, I remember that very well.
Yeah, and so that's kind of when I really, in earnest, started paying attention to Pistons basketball. I watched it on television. I was a fan of it. But when I really, in earnest, started watching it and buying seats was, I think, the Silverdome days. And it was an interesting experience watching the Pistons play in that huge facility. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
You don't really hear much about those Silverdome days anymore. It's all about the Palace whenever people talk about the Detroit Pistons during the bad boy years and the blue-collar going-to-work teams of the early 2000s. But what was it like to go and watch those games in the Silverdome? What was that like watching basketball in a dome?
Well, the noise level was, off the charts because it just, echoed or reverberated or whatever. When they had one of the critiques of the Silverdome is that like Monsters of Rock would come in there and it would just, the echo was just all over the place. But it was really cool because you're watching an NBA ball game and it sounds like you're in a stadium watching an NFL game filled with 87,000 fans, so it was very interesting. Of course, depending on where your seats were and how big the players were from your view.
That was like probably watching ants going up and down the hardwood.
Yeah, and it was, and they had, if I remember correctly, they had one of the screens, hanging there, it helped a lot. Which, when they transitioned to the Palace, had 23,078 seats. And I don't believe there was ever a bad seat in the Palace. I mean, I've been on that back wall when I, early on when the Bad Boys was playing there, but they still weren't bad seats, and you kind of had that deeper bowl arena feel. So in essence, you really weren't that far from the court, but, so you could actually feel like you're part of the game. But it lended itself at the Silverdome to being a little bit disconnected, but it was still fun.
Fenway Park has the green monster. Detroit, for a time, had the big blue screen. What a great time for Detroit basketball. And for you, as you're watching that era of Detroit Pistons basketball, what was it like to watch the Bad Boys era and to watch them compete against some legendary players in the NBA and collect a few championship rings along the way?
Oh, man, it was just so exciting. I just had started my career working in the support staff for Waterford schools, and there was that it was spilling over in your workplace when they were playing, and everybody was talking about Piston basketball, and of course, geographically, from where we were, it was 6 minutes driveway to driveway to watch these cats play ball, and it was affordable. And watching these cats from all over the country come into their gym, and my son, who is 30 something now, but he was still enamored with the idea that I got to see Michael Jordan play live, as a fan. Back when the Bulls were trying to make their run at the championship, and the Pistons were the cats who were standing in their way, and it just was an amazing time to be a Piston fan, and it's something I'll always remember. Just going in there, and I watched an interview, and this is kind of where I captured one of the ideas. But Bill Laimbeer himself made the comment about when they would come in, it was just a given that they were going to win. And so that brought the fan base, in there, and it, people just came in and they knew that the Bad Boys team, and even the first and the second year that they won, it's like, you're buying a ticket and you're going to see them win. And so it was an amazing time.
I am right there with your son. I envy you. You got to see Michael Jordan live on the court. This wasn't Michael Jordan on TV like so many of us saw. You actually got to see him play, and in a very special time in his career. It was a time in which he really had to develop himself into the player that he was just to get past the Detroit Pistons. And as you're watching the Jordan rules and the Bad Boys era and all of this going on, at what point did you say to yourself, you know what this place really needs? A dude in a giant red, white, and blue afro wig getting up and hyping everybody up. When did that come to be?
Well, the Palace and Mr. Davidson, they wanted to engage the fans. Now, because there came a time when the Pistons struggled to win ball games, and so then that's when they started adopting this, this blue collar mentality. And then the Orlando Magic had a team, entertainment team in house, and they were the fan base entertainment team. And so the Detroit Pistons modeled the Palace Knights, which was the first edition of the Palace Patrol, the Palace Knights, and they modeled that after the Orlando entertainment team. And so they put an ad in the paper. The next year, the following year, I think 97 was the first year of the Palace Knights. And I think in 1999, 2000, they had put an ad in the paper looking for MCs, entertainers, athletes, blah, 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 to be on an entertainment squad for the Detroit Pistons and Palace Sports Entertainment. And so it was a little blurb in the Oakland Press. And so I looked at it, and I've been a comedian all my life. I've done Christian stand up. I've done, I always try to bring even lightheartedness to some of the most serious situations without being offensive. And I says, that's for me. And so I answered the ad, and I went out to the Palace. And at the time, President Clinton was in office, and I do impressions. I do. I started out doing Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy and many of the Muppets. And then when President Clinton came in office, I have a killer impression of President Clinton.
Can you do it right now?
Well, I don't know if I can do that, Duff. You might have to pay me some royalties because, it's a distinctive type of talk, when you're the president, especially, but anyway.
That's perfect. I love it. Thank you. Now I got to hear your Kermit the Frog. I've always been a Kermit the Frog fan. How do you go about that?
Well, it's real simple. It's just like this. Hi, Kermit the Frog here for Sesame Street's News. We are here with Duff and Buddy the Afroman, and we are doing a live podcast, and we hope that you enjoy it.
Perfect. I love it, my man. That is great. So you do all these impressions. How did you come up with the get-up for Red, White, and Blue Afroman? What was the thought process there?
Well, when we came on board, we came in the same year that the Pistons traded Grant Hill to Orlando and for Chucky Atkins and Ben Wallace. And so we came in, Ben Wallace and I actually, our first day together, we walked into the gym together. We parked not too far apart, and we walked. And once again, nobody knew at that time who Ben Wallace was. And I'll just be candid with you.
I did because I follow college basketball.
Yeah, but many of your fans that are watching the game, and then you traded Grant Hill for these two guys. And of course, we all know history. Chucky Atkins became an awesome, backup point guard and sometimes full front point guard, and then Ben Wallace was Ben Wallace. And so the first year or so, there was no afro. That was just, I was part of the Palace Patrol team, and we were doing all the fan-based stuff and launching T-shirts, giving pizzas away, making appearances for the team. And this wasn't just for the Pistons; it was for the Vipers, for the Shock, and and later on the Detroit Fury when they came along. But the afro came along with the next year or so. We acquired from Toronto. Eric Montrose as the big center. And so the Pistons had a promo, and once again, they're building a fan base. They're bringing people back in the seats. They had that teal. Anyway, we were that teal and whatever other colors it was.
Oh, I hated those uniforms.
Yeah, and that was our uniform as far as our team, our Palace Patrol team as well. I have a few of those pictures with me wearing them. And then they went to like the Grease Monkey style uniform, paramedic pants and a blue shirt with all the logos and stuff. And with that, the Pistons came up with the idea of this one particular night because we had Eric Montrose and Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace more a true power forward than a center, and Eric Montrose a true center. And they had a big hair, no hair night. And you got half off, or you got a free ticket, buy one, get one free or something. And they actually had barbers in the atrium at the Palace, and they were having people shave their head. They were getting their head shaved for free tickets. Actually amazing. And then, so that would be no hair. And then the big hair would be, they had, I think as some of our automotion dancers were out there with rulers, and they were measuring people's hair, how long it was. And so, if it met some length criteria, they got free tickets. So for that particular night, I went in the costume room, and Hooper, who was our mascot there, he actually was the mascot for Tampa Bay Lightning, and he was also Paws. He was also Sparty at one time, and for this time he was Hooper, and so he threw me an afro from the costume shop, from our prop room, and I wore that night. And it was just a regular, black afro. And I had a little tiny clown bike that I had brought with me. And I was on the court on my clown bike with the On Your Feet sign with that black afro. And the Detroit Free Press captured a photo and put it in their sports page, and it stuck. And so I think that's like 2001, or in the beginning of 2001, 2002 seasons. And then it after that game, it metamorphosized. Is that a word, metamorphosized?
I think so. Works for me.
And so I went to the costume shop out here in Waterford that the Pistons dealt with a lot, and I bought me because I wanted a red, white, and blue because they were going to red, white, and blue. They changed their colors back to what they knew, and that's sometimes what you got to do in order to start, go back to what you know. And so they went back to the red, white, and blue, and so I'm looking for a red, white, and blue afro, none to be found. And so the costume shop had a blue one, and then I painted it with color hairspray, and I painted it red, white, and blue. It kind of looked funky that first year, but then I found red, white, and blue afros, and that became my moniker, if you will, for the remainder of the time that I was with the team.
So take me through what you would normally do on a game night as the red, white, and blue Afro-Man. What were some of the antics, and what were some of the things you did to get the crowd ready for game time?
Well, the interesting thing is that we'd go out there, in the gym during, right when the game plays on, and the fans will see just that part of us. Well, it started much earlier than that. Our call time was sometimes 3, and if it's during playoffs or the finals, it was like 4 hours call time before tip off. And so there was game prep as far as putting our games together for the fans to play on the court, or there was T-shirts to roll for our T-shirt cannon, or for the slingshot that we launched T-shirts. There was birthday lists to do, or proposals, of marriage that we would get ready. Then we'd have a production meeting. All the Palace Patrol and, camera guys, everybody who was involved in the production would be in the production meeting. And we would have a script just like you would have a TV script for, any program. And then we would follow that script. And it was, and then when it came close to getting game time, we would select fans, go out into the audience, select fans. We'd have sponsors, for a particular game. And then we bring the fans on the court and it was pretty cool because the fans, one way they got to touch the Pistons by proxy was being involved with the Palace Patrol, which was an awesome thing. And getting them on the court and then watching their faces. And just in particular, we used to do this game called Dress Up and Shoot, where we would bring kids on the court, dress up in the actual player's outfit, the gym shoes, the shorts, and the jersey, and they would dribble down the court. After they got dressed, they would dribble down the court, and whoever made the basket won the game. And that was probably one of the premier games that we played because it was kids, and it was just to watch it because they're actually in, a size 16 Nike or whatever, and watch them, drag the whole thing down the court. And that was, and to watch their faces and watch the fans interaction with them, it was just worth it all. And, with us doing what we do, and then at the end of the night, packing up all of our things and taking it back underneath the risers and putting it away for another day, and then start all over again the next game.
It had to be super special, though, to interact with the kids and get them involved.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the Afro part of it was kind of enamoring because people were like, well, that's that guy. Well, I was just the guy in the funny hair. I didn't know that it would do what it did. Because, I mean, I had tons of teammates on the Palace Patrol. But I kind of had that thing where I'm like, I want to stand out, and that's what happened, and that's why it was just way, way cool and then the kids, because what happens is then they wind up that's a memory that they'll have for their entire life. That time I went to the Palace and I did this, I went on the court and I won a t-shirt or whatever the case may be. And that made it really just, that's the reward behind what we were doing and we were the game within the game, and fans enjoyed that. They enjoyed that interaction, that personal interaction that we were able to bring to the game. And it wound up being, once again, for an old guy like me to have that much fun, it wound up being a lifelong memory for myself as well.
Coming up, Buddy and the Pistons go to work.
Charles, Gavin, Trevor. Yeah. Who has the best student section in Michigan?
Close. It's pretty close, but I think Clark should get
I say we ask our student section. Yeah!
Winter is here in the state of Michigan, but hard cider is good for all 4 seasons. Looking for the best hard cider in Oakland County? Then stop by Fourth Coast Cider Works. Located in the main entrance to Canterbury Village, Fourth Coast has many flavors on tap, and some you can take home. Now, if you're like me and you like testing your useless trivia knowledge against others, then come on down to Fourth Coast on Thursday evenings for Trivia Night. Fourth Coast is open Thursday through Sunday. For a complete list of ciders and hours, go to fourthcoastciderworks.com. Fourth Coast Cider Works. Quality craftsmanship, quality hard cider. And that's a Duff Said. Support for a Duff Said comes from you, the listener. It also comes from people like Bethany and Michelle, who recently became patrons of this podcast. And you can too. For as little as $2 a month or $24 a year, you can help A Duff Said continue to grow and continue to provide the great content that you've come to expect from me each week. And if you're a patron, you get access to exclusive content that sometimes doesn't make it into the show. So just go to patron.podbean.com/A Duff Said. What was it like to be the red, white, and blue Afroman and to have people point you out and say, hey, I know that guy. That's the red, white, and blue Afroman.
It was humbling. We had a event that was planned for this one particular night where they were going to set an indoor Guinness Book of World Records for most wigs worn at an indoor venue, sporting event. There's a place, I forgot the name of the place in Australia that held that record. But the Pistons set out to set a indoor record of most wigs worn in an indoor sporting event. And at the door of the Palace, when you came in, they passed out red, white, and blue afros. And it don't get no more humbling than that. That organization thought enough of this old guy here and what he was trying to do and what he was trying to bring. And they passed out all these red, white, and blue afros, and they set an indoor world record for most wigs worn. And it's kind of totally random if you think about it. Most wigs worn in an indoor venue. To look around the arena, and because Mason, he got on the mic and we went to a live shot, and Mason says, okay, everybody put your wigs on. And the camera, Palace Vision went around and showed everybody wearing their red, white, and blue afros. And it don't get no more humbling than that, that somehow we were an inspiration for that. And one of the cool moments of that night, now I became good friends with Bob Seger over the years, and he had brought his son, one of his sons, to the game, and his son was sitting in the stands. Seeger had seats right across from the opponent's bench on the first riser there. And so his son had the afro on, and so I went up there, and I always carried camera in a box with me. And I said, "Hey, I need to get a picture with you, Bob." And so Bob thought I was wanting a picture with him, and I wanted to get a picture with his son having the afro on. And so I handed him the camera in the box, and Bob had the camera backwards. And I said, "Here, no, turn it around." And so I have a picture, me and my teammate with Bob Seeger's son, who is now a grown man now, wearing the red, white, and blue afros. And it's actually, I have that on my Facebook as well. But it's stuff like that, you just, that's stuff you cannot purchase, memories like that. And I was honored to be a part of it.
Another memory you couldn't buy was the 2004 NBA championship team. They had to go out and win that. They had to earn those rings, and they got them against a very good Lakers team. The Pistons actually won that series 4-1. What do you remember about that series, and how special was it to see that team become a championship team?
Yeah, that's why they call the 5-game sweep, which is, if we walk back to that last game in L.A., we could have taken one in L.A., and everybody's like, "Why didn't they make that call?" And then they came back. I take that back. We could have won both those games in L.A., and then they came back here to Detroit, and it was awesome. It was game 3, that first game, and of course anybody is there for the finals. Sports casters, celebrities, Jack Nicholson, everybody's there. And so I'm getting my games all ready for the event, as far as for the fans part of it. And then I get stopped on the corner there, right by the opponent's bench. The Pistons tunnel comes out, empties out on the opponent's bench. And then I have ABC News in LA stop me. "Hey, we're getting ready to go live. Can we do a live interview?" "Absolutely. I'll hang out." And then we have the ABC News in Detroit is out there for their broadcast, their 5 o'clock. I think it's their 5 o'clock broadcast. And so it was in just a matter of 15 minutes. I was able to be interviewed by the folks from WXYZ in Detroit here, and then I stepped over to my right and I was interviewed by ABC LA, and then I was interviewed by NBA TV, and I was interviewed by it was all kind of broadcast through FDS. Fox Sports Detroit got one part of that, and then I was on ABC News with Peter Jennings, all within 15 minutes. Just absolutely just mind-boggling. And what was way cool, I always talked up the Pistons regardless of if they were in a slump or whatever they were struggling with. And that was what we tried to do, is say, the Pistons are going to take this thing. And I had the confidence to know that they would. And, when they come on the court, and the fan base, and once again, the fan base was a huge part of the ball team. The fans let everybody know, hey, we're here, we're watching you, and we want you to win this ball game. And so that was, and then to watch them, because from 2000, the teal 2000s, all the way back to the red, white, and blue, all the way back to bringing, that trophy back to Detroit. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing spectacle to watch.
I hope you got some special memorabilia from that year. Did you actually get a championship ring or anything like that to commemorate that year?
Well, what would have been nice. Now, I wasn't a full-time employee. Your full-time staff at the Palace got the staff rings, and we, as the supporting cast, if you will, I got a really nice lapel, stainless, not stainless, it was sterling silver, trophy, and it has the Pistons on it. But one of my longtime things I would have loved to have had, if nothing else, just had a staff championship ring to go along with it. But sad to say I didn't get a championship ring to add to my collection. But I have in my office where I pastor a church. In my office on the shelves is just a snapshot, just a small snapshot of the memorabilia that I have in my possession from those years. But some of the greatest times is when they were in the heat for that championship, and then my little, it's got a little picture of the trophy. It's the shape of the little trophy that's that I have in that office as well.
And that is something that really fascinates me, as your role with the red, white, and blue Afroman. In addition to having that role, you're also a pastor at your church. And I think that's interesting that you kind of combine the two. Which role in your life came first?
Well, I started the ministry in 1976, it's as it has been over, brought us thus far. We're full time now. I was bivocational for a lot of years because of my employment. I was full time employee actually, and that worked out great. And then we were able to retire, and I'm a full time pastor now. I go to the office every day, as opposed to going to, my job at Waterford Schools, or, I had other jobs. I was, for 9 years, I worked in the funeral business. So I had several jobs at one time, or for that matter. It's like in living color. How many jobs you got? And I counted at one time. I had like 5 jobs, and 1 full time and 4 part times.
I remember that show, and I remember that joke because someone always made that comparison about me when I was in college, because I wore a number of different hats too. But some of us, we just like going to work and doing our jobs.
Right. And that's what was cool about the Pistons. And you hit the nail on the head, is going to work. And that's what was really, whoever came up with that in the front office, about going to work. And that really struck a chord with this blue collar state that we live in. And that's what really struck a chord with folks, because it's like, I can't afford the expensive seats on the court, but I can afford this seat here, and it's not too far from the expensive seats, and I get to see the same game as those folks that are paying $1,000 for that one game seat. And I'm just a regular guy that goes to work every day. And we even had there was a moniker as the players would come out of the tunnel, and it was just above, and you might see it in some of the replays, it says "going to work." And that's what really echoed with everybody in this area, that going to work mentality, just scrapping. And what was way cool is they had adopted much of Chuck Daly's style of coaching, where it wasn't, and that's where you and I know this about Jordan. That's where Jordan really struggled, because he was such an awesome player, in my opinion, the greatest player to ever touch a ball. But he really struggled to have that nucleus of ball players around him that he could make better. And they finally gelled and made that happen. But Chuck Daly was kind of like the grandfather or godfather, if you will, of that 3-guard offense and that East Coast offense. And, the West Coast teams would come in and the Pistons would slow them right down. West Coast teams come in and they're scoring 125 points anywhere else, and they come in the Pistons gym and the Pistons hold them 79 points. I'm like, are you kidding me? And it's because that the Pistons and the coaching staff found something that worked, found something that put wins up on the board, which is awesome.
So the Going to Work team wins a championship in 2004, and the Pistons made it back to the finals in 2005. But in between that, we had the infamous Malice at the Palace. Now, for those of you listening who may not be familiar with that, what happened was there was a game on November 19th, 2004, between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. Earlier that year, the Pistons ended what was supposed to be a run at a championship for the Indiana Pacers. So the Pacers came into the Palace that night looking for revenge on the Pistons, and the Pacers absolutely wiped them off the floor at the Palace. They had that game won. But towards the end, there was an altercation on the court between the Pacers' Ron Artest and the Pistons' Ben Wallace. Artest kind of gave Wallace a hard foul. These two started to get into it, and they had to be separated. So Ron Artest of the Pacers goes off. He lays out on the scorer's table at the Palace, and then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, this beer comes flying out of the stands and hits Ron Artest on the scorer's table. And he reacts. He goes into the stands, he goes into the seats and starts fighting with Detroit Pistons fans. And then suddenly other Pacer players go into the stands to try to separate it. And then more fights ensue. And you have fans fighting with Indiana Pacers players. Pacers personnel are trying to separate Ron Artest and get everybody to the locker room off the floor. But it is just an absolute brawl breaking out. And this is considered to be one of the ugliest moments in all of professional sports. People are still talking about it to this day. There was actually just recently a documentary that was released on Netflix about Malice at the Palace. And Buddy, you were featured in that documentary, and I want to get your take on that. But first, what was your experience like on that night?
Wowie. As you walk back in memory and you look at it, the Indiana Pacers were just walking all over us that night. And the score is such a disparity in the score. And so we were underneath the risers. For those of you who have seen the Palace, if you look from the TV view, look to your left, and the risers underneath, there's a big place under there where we could do our game prep. And I was underneath the stage, underneath the risers, putting all the games away. As far as we were concerned, there was no us running on the court, with a victory type of sign or pumping our fists and getting the crowds fired up, because we were just getting spanked. And so I'm putting the games away, and we have a clear comm that we wear during the game, and so we can hear what's going on television and what we can hear what's going on in the arena. And I hear the crowd, just a big crowd reaction, a big roar, and then I hear the producer in my headset say, "Oh my God." And then I hear another roar, and then I hear the producer say again, "Oh my God." And so about that time, I came out from underneath the risers out of the Pistons tunnel, and by that time, Ron Artest had went into the stands, and so the seats right underneath the basket, right in front of the Pacer bench, those fans had started making their way onto the court. And I used to work security back in the 70s, and so I went into security mode, not thinking I'm in costume. I'm the Afro guy, and so I went and shooed those fans back into their seats. And by that time, then whatever had happened when Artest went in the stands had come down onto the court. And I was on the court at the time, and there was two Piston fans that had come on the court, and I don't know what they were thinking. But by that time, Jermaine O'Neal and Ron Artest had come down, and there was altercation between one fan and Ron Artest. And then Jermaine O'Neal came in, and somebody had thrown another beer or something on where we were at. And I went down. It was me and Jermaine O'Neal. Jermaine O'Neal, this one cat wanted to square off with him, and Jermaine O'Neal just drilled him, and this cat went down, and all of us went down in a heap. My afro came off, and of course, as everybody was able to see in all the other shots and stuff, Fox Sports Detroit had some of the most vivid of that event that night. But I was face down on the court, and I thought, this is not good. And so I wound up that night, I had a separated hip from just the slipping, and then I had a elbow that had a cracked elbow, and I wound up in the emergency room. And we didn't know, and I tell you, before I even went to the hospital, we were back in our dressing room back there. We didn't know how big it was outside of the arena. And I had one of our teammates call me, and she was in Times Square at the time, and she says, "Buddy, you're on Sony Vision at Times Square." And that's when I realized this is much bigger than just us being in there and having, somebody just got in a fist fight or something. And it actually became huge, and then it wound up just all, and it wound up being a worldwide event in the English and non-English speaking world, never knowing that event right there was just became huge, and still talking about it to this very day.
It was recently a part of a documentary that was on Netflix talking about the Malice at the Palace. And it's interesting because you and Ben Wallace are really the only people that are associated with the Pistons that commented on the documentary about what took place that night. I'm curious, were you surprised at all that they reached out to you to talk about it for the documentary?
Well, yes, I was. I had one of the ABC sports producers contacted me last year, and this was just before COVID hit, and said, "Hey, we're putting together 4 specials for Netflix, and one of those is going to be regarding the Malice at the Palace, or the brawl, Palace Brawl. And I'd really like to get you involved in it, to hear your side of the story and hear what you saw and all those things." And of course, through the years, I became friends with ABC folks and Fox Sports Detroit folks, and who I'm still dear friends with today. We're friends, and we were colleagues then. In certain blush, they had a job to do, I had a job to do, and we became friends. And so when he reached out to me, I said sure, and I didn't know until the piece was done that it was going to be told. The story was told more towards an Indiana, from their point of view, and what they dealt with regarding how it just derailed their championship aspirations. Because, and as I think I had said before, Indiana that year was on track to win the East, and that incident derailed them.
It really did. It really did, because I was a member of the Indiana Pacers radio network at that time. I actually did not know what was going on that night because I was doing a high school sports show, and I was fielding thousands of calls of people calling in for high school basketball games and state finals football games that evening. So I didn't hear about it until the next day. And then, of course, our show on Saturday, we spent most of our time talking about it. I remember the host of the show saying he didn't want to dwell on it that much, but I was talking about it in my scoreboard updates and my sports reports because it was a pretty big deal. Everyone wanted to know what the punishments were going to be for everybody.
Right.
And that team, like you said, was supposed to be the team. This was going to be Reggie Miller's last year with the Pacers, and everybody wanted to see him go out on top. They wanted him to have like that John Elway, Peyton Manning type moment when he retires with a ring. His final season is with a championship. And I really feel like that brawl just wiped out any chance they had. The Pistons, of course, wound up knocking Indiana out of the playoffs in the second round. My wife reminds me all the time about that Tayshaun Prince block on Reggie Miller. That is one thing my wife and I will never agree on. When we started dating, I said, "Hey, I really like hockey. I will become a Red Wings fan if you become an Indianapolis Colts fan." And she said, "Sure, we'll do that." But she will never be an Indiana Pacers fan. And one of the reasons why is because of Malice at the Palace. She won't do it. She will not let me wear Pacers gear anywhere, especially when we go out to Pistons games. I'm not allowed to wear anything but Pistons or CMU gear that night. No Indiana gear at all. There's like a moratorium on it.
Well, that's understandable. But if she'd let you wear a Reggie Miller jersey, I think most fans would understand.
And those are the ones I have. I have the vintage Reggie jerseys.
Because even if he comes into our house, I think most Piston fans have the highest regard for Reggie Miller. And, of course, his sister of basketball fame as well, Cheryl Miller, who is the broadcaster after her career. But yeah, that it was just that block. Some people believe it was a pin, pin to the backboard or whatever. And so, who knows, but yeah, the suspensions, the fines, and the court stuff that went on in that whole, everybody had waiting with bated breath, on what's going to happen. What is David Stern going to do? What is David Gorsica, the prosecuting attorney here in Oakland County, going to do? And of course, then we've seen all that play out and watched the Pacer bench get emptied out due to suspensions, and watched the Piston bench suffer somewhat, but not as great as the Pacer bench suffered. And then watched what was a little disappointing, watched some of the commentary from some of the talking heads about how horrible the Piston fans were. And I'm not defending those that did bad things, but I'm just talking about as a whole. I know the greater good of the Piston fans was not those few that were throwing, bottles and beer and popcorn and all that junk, and they deserved to get caught, and they got caught, and they paid for those things. But the fan base in Detroit, the fan base here in Southeast Michigan, by and large, were not those fans that caused so much havoc that night, it was disappointing. It was sad to watch that happen. Watch Steven Jackson, get hit with stuff as he's walking in the tunnel, peeling his jersey off, having to cover his head up. That was just horrible, absolutely horrible. But I think the redemptive part of the whole thing is that's not us as a fan base. That's those people who decide to go to their inner ugliness and bring it out and give all of the fans here in this area a black eye, at least for that period of time. But I loved our fans. I still do. And once again, we have the greatest fans in the NBA. I really believe that. And of course, in that broadcast from Netflix, you can see where, Reggie Miller even made the comment that we have a very devoted fan base, and of course he used the word rabid, but we had a very passionate fan base. And
you had a reason to be.
Yeah, amen. We were winning ball games. We were winning Central Division championships. We were winning, and here we won 2 Eastern Conference championships. Went to the NBA Finals twice, and which I believe in 2005 against the Spurs. I think watching it, I believe that we got a little bit the short stick on some of the officiating, but that is what it is.
So when you're coming up for your part in this documentary, what were some of the things that they were going to ask you, and what were some things that you were hoping to get out as part of your message for the documentary?
Well, I think that they were trying to humanize the whole thing, as far as it wasn't just, millionaire ball players who had a role in this whole thing, but there were actually just folks who, that were involved in it, that have a story to tell, that had a different point of view maybe, and that wasn't going to be painted with just a blush of, well, this is how I see it, and there can be no other view of it. And of course, as we see, the ball players in that interview, those cats, from their point of view, there was a lot of things that went on that I couldn't see, and so, but there was things that they didn't know that I knew about, and I think they just kind of wanted to get my point of view, where I was at that point in time on that corner of the court, coming from a guy who's been on that court hundreds of times, in less assaultive type of situation. We were all about fun and entertainment and making people laugh and making families enjoy themselves. And in this particular time, the Afroman was in a situation where none of that was involved, and it was just they wanted to hear from that guy and what your point of view was, or in speaking of me, and we tried to do our best, and try to tell our story, what we knew about, and that the Pistons in themselves, once again, people should not be defined by one thing that happens in their life, but many times they are. And there'll be a lot of times when you mention the Detroit Pistons and Indiana Pacers in the same breath, everybody's mind will go back to that time, and it's defined by that time. Rightly so, maybe not. I don't know. That's for the historians to decide. But for us, it was a time that we went through, and the thing was, we continued to play ball games. We continued to win ball games, and it wound up being, a part of the history, but it is not the history of that team and that championship team that just gelled so well, like a well-oiled machine.
You were the red, white, and blue Afroman for 12 years. What do you hope your legacy, being that character, will be for you?
The legacy I want it to be is I brought 100% of me trying to make somebody's life better, at least for just a few moments in time, every single time I walked in there. And I want folks to be able to say, I remember that guy. I got a pizza from him. Or I remember that guy. I got a picture with him. I remember that guy. I got a T-shirt from him. Hey, I remember that guy. He made balloons and made a balloon hat for my kid. And if they remember me in fondness, mission accomplished. That's because that's what we decided to do, and that's what my personality is. I always try to leave people saying that was a pleasant interaction with that guy. Even when they don't put all my tacos in the bag before I leave the drive-thru.
I like that. That's a good analogy. I like that. So it's been nearly 5 years now since the Pistons have left the Palace of Auburn Hills. What was special about that arena for you?
Well, I was able to make, especially with the season ticket holders, folks that were there every single game, I galvanized lifelong friendships with them, people that I'm still friends with to this very day. And the staff that I became friends with then, I'm still friends with them to this very day. And in my pastoral role, there are folks who I encountered that were staff members or people from Center Plate, and that I married them. And then I've had some friends that have passed away that I have been honored to officiate at their funerals. So this thing that God allowed me to do is something that I was very honored to do. And I'm humbled at the fact that this old guy, God allowed me to be able to step in people's lives and make a difference, at least for just a little while, that they'll always have a fond memory of a time that they went and watched a ball game, and there was this funny guy who made them laugh. And I would say that was a mission accomplished.
Up next, Detroit basketball is back in the heart of the city at Little Caesars Arena. So when are we going to see the red, white, and blue Afroman there? Fourth Coast Cider Works is the place to be for hard cider in Oakland County. Located in the main entrance to Canterbury Village, Fourth Coast is quality craftsmanship, quality hard cider. Stop by Fourth Coast and try some of their many flavors on tap. You can also take some home in a can or a howler. Fourth Coast is open Thursday through Sunday. For a complete list of ciders and hours, go to fourthcoastciderworks.com. The best hard cider is on the Fourth Coast. And that's a Duff Said. Once again, I want to say thank you so much for hitting the play button on this podcast, and that includes two very special listeners, Michelle and Bethany. They recently became patrons of a Duff Said. Now, for as little as $2 a month, or $24 a year, you can help this show to continue to grow and provide the content that you enjoy. And if you become a patron of a Duff Said, we have got a lot of great gifts in store for you. We've got bumper stickers, we've got t-shirts. Heck, I'll even record your voicemail message. So if you're having trouble ever figuring out what to say, I'll say it for you. And that's a Duff Said. If you'd like to become a patron of A Duff Said, all you got to do is go to patron.podbean.com/A Duff Said. Nowadays, the Detroit Pistons play their games at Little Caesars Arena in downtown Detroit. But, Buddy, you chose not to follow them downtown. What led you to the decision not to go with them and continue that role as the red, white, and blue Afroman?
Well, a couple different things. Was first thing I took on a full-time pastorate. I was already pastor, and then I retired, and I became full-time pastor. And then another part of that was I felt it was time for me to, step aside. A lot of folks didn't realize what my age was back in those days. But I'm 61 years old, and just a few years ago, that would make me in my mid 50s. And then the Little Caesars Arena, for me, it really didn't strike as being home. And it doesn't mean that I don't support them, the ball players, and support the team as far as, but I just don't have that drive to go to Detroit as far as in that inner drive. There are entertainment squads there, but the hugest, is that a word? But the hugest, I guess part of that is when Mr. Davison sold the team, it changed. And this is not a knock or criticism other than an observation of Tom Gore's. He took the team in a different direction. He took the entertainment part of that and took it in a different direction. And I thought, well, this is time for me to step back. And that's what we chose to do. And I look back with no regrets, and I'll look back with a heart of fondness on the years that I had with the team. And we wish them the best down in Detroit. I'd really love to see them, personally, I'd love to see them have their own arena that, like the Palace. It was their gym. And there's something to be said when I walk into a place, this is my house. And I, once again, I can't speak for the ball players, ball players may walk in and say, yeah, this is my house and this is where I play basketball. And, but from a fan base and from a personal level, the Palace in itself had a certain aura about it. It's like the Staples Center or, like United Center and like the other gyms around the country that the ball players, this is their gym. There's a certain amount of, being at home and going down to LCA. It's the Red Wings house, and the Pistons, they play basketball there, and I understand you can do that, but I guess that's my long answer to should have been a short answer, but that's what it is.
No, that's fascinating. I'm really glad that you took the time to lay all that out, because I was just curious as to what was it that led you to decide to stay back here in Auburn Hills. Have you been to a game at all at LCA since they've moved over there?
Yeah, no, I sure haven't. I have a couple people that actually, when I was working here at the Palace, there's a couple people that work there that have moved down there, that have moved up, and they're working very hard every day. But I've really not had the want to go down there. And
since your days at the Palace are now over, I know you do some things here and there with the Red, White, and Blue Afroman. I know you do some appearances every now and then. But could there ever be a situation where we might see him at a big event or out in public again in that getup?
Well, who knows? Time will tell. I would be open to that idea. I was approached at one time, right at the transition period where we were backing away and we were retiring from the Pistons. Tom Wilson and a couple other folks left PSA, and they went and worked for Illich Holdings. And so I had an opportunity to go and be who I was down at Comerica Park. But the enticement wasn't going to be the same. But yes, we may, the short answer is yes, there's possibly a time that we could be coaxed to do this or that. And the Afro Man lives on. He lives on anyway, in celluloid somewhere. One of the things that we have been trying to do, and it just came to my mind as we're wrapping up, we're trying to get a Palace Patrol reunion of the old Palace Patrol guard, us originals, and to come down to the LCA for one game. You know, the Afro Man and Steve Coleman, who's QTMC, and Big Dave, and a few others. I think there's 5 of us that are in the original nucleus of the Palace Patrol, and we've really been we've talked behind the scenes about, getting a hold of the producer down there and saying, hey, let us come back for one game and do something. But that has fallen on deaf ears at this point. But anyway, that would be kind of cool. I got it, to go back just for one game, launch some T-shirts from the court, is old Palace Patrol. And because I tell you what, it's there's nothing, I kid you not, man, there's nothing like getting on the court, launching T-shirts. And you've been there when that's happened. And
oh yeah. I've never caught one though.
Yeah. Watching the crowd just absolutely go bonkers, or go on the court, from, when you go into a hot timeout or something, you go on the court with the On Your Feet sign, and then they play, Shout by the Isley Brothers, and watching the fans just go absolutely bonkers. And you're on the court and you're making that happen. Man, oh man, it's just so exhilarating, exciting. And so anyway, I digress.
Well, I was still rolling on all of what you just said. I could include that in the podcast for next week.
Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be fine.
If you would like to hear everybody say that you would like to have that Palace Patrol reunion and to get back on the court, I can include all of that if you're okay with it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I will edit that in just for you.
Who knows? It may give birth to something really cool for one night.
Hey, I hope so. I can say I had a part of that.
Amen.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Buddy Frantz, making some time this week to tell me the story of the Red, White, and Blue Afroman. Thank you so much for sharing that with everybody. I really hope that we get to see him again someday, because I only knew about your character because I saw you on the Netflix documentaries, and I just said to myself, there's a story to this guy, and I want to hear it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to lay all that out and describe the history of the Red, White, and Blue Afroman. Pastor Buddy Frantz, thank you so much for making some time this week on A Duff Said.
I appreciate it, Duff. Take care. Happy New Year to you.
Many thanks once again to Pastor Buddy Frantz for making some time on this edition of A Duff Said. Now, if you're hearing this podcast for the very first time, please be sure to check out my website, duffsaid.com. There you will find the previous 51 episodes that I have done with this podcast. You can hear this show on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and YouTube. You can also get updates on upcoming shows and other info by going to my Facebook page, Sports Journalist Duff Tyler. You can also find info on the show on Twitter by going to Duff Tyler. Until next time, this is Duff Tyler reminding you that if Duff said it, it must be true, because that's what a Duff said.